Again, this comes from my book, Your Journey to Being Yourself. This is the start of chapter 5. And I'm going to read to you a little bit of what is creating the problem. All right. So this is how it starts out. Think about your last relationship, the one that left you stuck to your couch with your coffee table littered with empty beer or wine bottles. Remember how you chastised yourself for ignoring your fears that pointed to the obvious signs that this person would eventually betray you. As you sat there, feeling ashamed, grasping for yet another Kleenex to absorb the streaming tears with self-contempt and scorn, you uttered, "I knew it. I knew they would do this to me." You can no longer deny the obvious. You're completely present to this pattern within yourself, where you ignore the obvious signs and your repeated self-sabotage in neglecting your internal truth. You feel embarrassed and stupid. Yet you also feel a sense of power and hope because you know you always saw through their deception. If only you could listen to yourself next time. Now, if you can't draw on a relationship memory, think of your favorite hobby. Maybe it's golf. Picture yourself on the driving range, golf clubs and empty baskets scattered about. Your fingers are calloused. Your shirt soaked through as the salt of the sweat burns your eyes. You rake another ball and begin your setup. Your anxiety starts to rise as your body creates an image of that one spot in your swing where there's a hitch. You know it's coming, but you're determined to stop it this time. As you take the club back, the fear escalates, the emotions stiffen you, and instead of starting your downswing with your legs, you come over the top with your right arm. It takes command, and you watch helplessly as the ball sails to the right once again. Redirecting your shame, you slam the club down in frustration and mutter, "I'm such an idiot. Why can't I get this?" Taking a seat on the nearby bench, you lean forward, examining your hands as the sweat from your brow drips past them. You're fully aware of your bad habit, the fear of its recurrence, and the self-loathing you'll feel when it happens again. But even though you're certain of these outcomes, you're just as certain you can overcome them. You stand back up, grab your 8-iron, and drag another ball into place. Regardless of the life circumstance, whether it's a relationship, a hobby, a friendship, or a career, have you noticed this pattern is always the same? Step 1, a fear you want to avoid repeats itself. Step 2, once repeated, self-recrimination and shame follows. Step 3, then comes the awareness that both fear and shame will be experienced. 4, the certainty of outcome and the recognition of the part you play creates a sense of power. 5, the combination of the self-inflicted certainty and power sparks hope that you can change the outcome. 6, that hope empowers you to try again. 7, the self-victimizing cycle repeats itself until you own the part you play, do the healing work required, and learn a new way. Welcome to the worst day cycle. Does that resonate? Isn't that everything we do? The same pattern over and over and over. That's because we're stuck reliving the unhealed emotions and trauma from our childhood, and it permeates everything we do. We can't avoid it. The only way you can stop this cycle is to learn emotional authenticity. Now, there's a bit of a problem in being able to do that. part of the way your brain works, it works to sabotage you. And so I'm going to read a little bit from that section. This comes from, I think it's chapter 2 on how the brain and emotions work. So I'm going to read this, how your brain processes, and then we'll get into some solutions and some more stuff. So how exactly does the brain process information? All information coming from the 5 senses is initially filtered through the right hemisphere, which first creates an emotional awareness and reaction. You feel before you ever think. The right side then creates a global picture and understanding based on past experiences, childhood. Then it passes that information over to the left. There it's trimmed down, categorized, and labeled and simplified before it's supposed to be passed back to the right. A final emotional sifting completes the fullest, most complete, and accurate assessment for our best use and highest intellect. The last biological step of reconnecting with the right side, our emotions, is what's missing in our personal and societal constructs. And it happens often. Our tendency to finalize conclusions with left-sided thinking, rooted in analysis and detailed computations, leaves rigid outcomes of self-deception and denial, which lacks the fuller, more inclusive, emotional neutralizer we need to achieve a balanced, more successful conclusion, judgment, or decision. According to Ian McGilchrist, the author of The Master and His Emissary, I'm going to take a break from the manuscript here. He did a neuroscientific analysis of the last 20 years of all neuroscientific research to a macro analysis of all the conclusions of how the brain works. All right. This is a quote from his book. Quote, although the left hemisphere does not see and cannot understand what the right hemisphere understands, it is expert at pretending that it does, at finding quite plausible but bogus explanations for the evidence that does not fit its versions of events. McGilchrist's work reveals that the left side is built to operate as a denial-based, self-rejecting monster and is less reliable than the right in matters of attention, perception, judgment, emotional understanding, and indeed, intelligence, as it is conventionally understood. Even when the left side is exposed to truth and evidence or facts regarding its faulty processing, it will produce reasoning and actions that are even more false, destructive, and completely wrong. But it doesn't stop there. In fact, when the left side is exposed to the truth of its faulty processing, it doubles down and sees the evidence of its falseness as fuel to keep pursuing its destructive line of thinking. To make matters even more dire, since the left is built to deny truth and accountability, placing responsibility for its own wrongdoing on others is its second nature. The left side's goal is to remain steadfast in its need to be right. It may even go as far as flipping the script and casting itself as the victim of the situation, much like a narcissist. As McGilchrist puts it, the left hemisphere is not keen on taking responsibility. If the defect might reflect on the self, it does not like to accept it. But if something or someone can be made to take responsibility, if it's a victim of someone else's wrongdoing, it is prepared to do so. That's at the heart of what we are all stuck in. I'm going to read one more quote from him. The master, which is the right hemisphere, realizes the need for an emissary, the left hemisphere, to do certain work on his behalf, which he, the master, must not involve himself with, and then expects the left side to report back to him. That is why he appoints the emissary in the first place. The emissary, however, knowing less than the master, thinks he knows everything and considers himself the real master, thus failing to carry out his duty to report back. That's at the heart of why we can't control our emotions. We have a society and a science community that keeps pushing intellect, left hemisphere logic. Well, all the neuroscience shows that's not the best way for your brain to work. Your brain, everything we process always comes in emotionally. We have an emotional reaction. You can't control your emotions because we haven't taught emotional authenticity and emotional intelligence. As I said in my live the other day, is like building the outer edges of a puzzle. That's all. All you get is the border. You need emotional authenticity, which gives you the plan and process to build the interior of the puzzle. That's the full, complete picture that both hemispheres need. And that's what my program, my book, and everything I've designed teaches you how to do. It completes the picture. It completes the process between both hemispheres so that you can create not only the best emotional response, but the best intellectual response. Here's what you have to pay attention to. This is how the left hemisphere works. Because almost all information in personal development is that you have to think your way out of a problem. You know what your left hemisphere is going to do right now? It's going to go into denial. Because remember what the left hemisphere does. Even proof of its faulty processing, it'll double down and keep going in its falseness and then flip the script and make itself the victim. So this is what this book is going to show you repeatedly, is how we all do that. How everyone on the planet is stuck in this self-deception denial loop because we lack emotional authenticity, but mostly how to turn it around. So the first thing to recognize in you is, what are you feeling right now as you hear this new information? Because you're going to have an emotional, remember, all information comes into the right side and processes things emotionally based on past experiences. So take a second right now. If you're feeling a little uncertain about this new information, ask yourself a couple of questions. What am I feeling? If you don't know, I have a free feelings wheel on my website. Just go to the resources tab and you can download a free feelings wheel. And this is part of the emotional authenticity process. Is you learn to create what's called granularity and specificity to your emotions, because we're so underdeveloped emotionally, most of us don't really know what we're feeling. So the first step is, okay, scared, unsure, confused, uncertain, all right? Those are possible emotions. Then ask yourself, where in your body do you feel it? Because all emotional reactions are stored in the body. Now ask yourself, what's my first memory of having this thought and feeling? Most people are going to remember a situation somewhere in the last week or two, maybe boss or somebody said you were wrong. Okay, what's the next one before that? And then before that, and then before that. And eventually you're going to arrive at a memory between 2 and 10 years old of your parents standing over you, telling you that you didn't know the right answer. Boom. You're here present with me. You're 25, 35, 55, 65 years old. But in this moment, that feeling proves you are not conscious. You are reliving your childhood. You are detached from your authentic self. That's what this book shows you, is how we all are. And this is how it works. So you're reliving the past because all emotions are not pre-programmed. We're not born with them. They are learned, what are called simulations, concepts, and definitions. You're going to learn all about that in here. And so you're having an emotional reaction based on your childhood. That also, as you laid out all those experiences, there's your worst day cycle. You're just repeating it. Remember the first part of what I read in the book? There it is. You've been doing that same 7-step process over and over and over. It's become a stored in neural pathway. I use this analogy in my first book, Your Journey to Success. Have you ever gone sledding? Just think, if you haven't, think of, it's January or December 31st. It's probably snowing most places. Imagine 3 feet of powder had just fallen and you have this great hill next to your house and you and your friends are going to go sledding. So what do? You walk up that hill. You get to the top, you go sliding down. You do that a few times and all of a sudden the snow has been compressed, right? So now you're in this channel. Well, you can't steer out of that. That's all of us. I just proved it to you. You're repeating from childhood. You're stuck in the worst day cycle loop, repeating this exact same process through. This is what the human species does, okay? Because our brain doesn't know right from wrong. All it cares about is, do I know this experience or not? If it doesn't, it avoids it. If it knows it, even if it's bad, it will repeat it. That's the worst day cycle. That's the emotional chemical addiction we all get stuck in because of our underdeveloped brain, the lack of science and society to teach us that we need to grow emotionally to break out of that. So the only solution is to learn emotional authenticity. So you can, and what emotional authenticity teaches you is, what were the steps I took all the way up that hill? This is my pattern. This is my neural pathway pattern of how I repeat the pain and re-victimize myself by repeating these destructive choices and go down that hill. So you become aware. It's a massive awareness process of how you're caught in this loop. Now, once you're aware of it, then my classes and books and everything I teaches you how to take new steps up the hill. Because think of it, 3 feet of powder, you just step in the old spots, right? Because it's easier. Stepping in a new spot, you got to crush the snow down. It takes work. You got to lift your legs up higher. You're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to build the middle of the puzzle. Just give me the border. Just give me emotional intelligence where I don't have to do anything. I don't get anywhere, but it's simple and easy. I can just snap it together. So I'll just keep repeating these simple steps and go right down the path I've already driven or I've already sled. Well, we're going to have to do a little bit of lifting. Lift our legs up, create new steps all the way up the hill. And when you get to that top, you're at the top of your golf swing and that right arm wants to come over, or you're sitting there on a date and you see that sign. You see their deception. You see that there's a problem with this person. And with emotional authenticity, taking new steps, now you're at crunch time. Am I going to repeat the pattern and sled down this exact same path I've always chosen? Am I going to come over top? Am I going to agree to a second date? No. I'm done with the pain. I'm done hurting myself. I'm done with the destructive mental and emotional mess. I'm going to take 2 steps to the left. I'm going to carve a new neural pathway, one that works for me and not against me. Now, to do that, it's a massive process. I hate to, when you look at anything online of how to sell programs, they say, make it simple and easy. Make it the outside border of the puzzle, something that people just go, oh, they feel good. Well, you know what? That's why nobody's getting better, because nobody wants to tell people the truth. This is tough work. You got to make a commitment. You got to get up every day and go, no, I'm going to step in. I'm going to lift my leg and create a new step. I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm going to commit. Just like any other habit. Or what is it you love? Do you play tennis? Do you kayak? Do you go hiking? What are you passionate about? You're more than willing to do the work to learn those skills. I'm just advocating you be passionate for yourself. When are you going to start putting that passion into you? Isn't it your turn? Don't you deserve that? I mean, that's just the way I look at it. Aren't we worth putting the effort into us? That's why I always find it fascinating when people talk about personal development. They go, how much does it cost? I'm like, isn't that fascinating? Cost. Reclaiming my authenticity, reclaiming my life is a cost. No one ever says, how much is the investment? How much do I, in other words, how much do I matter? How much is it going to cost me to let go of my destructive loop? God, it's just going to cost me so much to take new steps. That just breaks my heart. Even that phrasing, you're going to learn how those descriptors and metaphors are teaching you, wait a minute, you're perceiving this wrong. It's a paradox. It's not a cost. The cost is if you choose not to learn how to take new steps. Because look at your life. How much does it cost you to not do the work? How many divorces have you had? How many narcissists have you been with? How many abusive people have you been with? How many are working below your potential? How many of you stuck in a job that you absolutely hate and can't stand? 93% of all people on the planet hate their job. That's proof of the worst day cycle. They're pursuing something that's self-victimizing. They're not living in their authentic self. They're stuck in left hemisphere logic. They're not using both sides of their brain the way it's supposed to be used. I find that heartbreaking. So the question that I had, and I was in this place too, because, I started recovery when I was 21, but I didn't get serious until my first divorce when I was 37, 38. And that divorce bankrupted me. And, so I tell the story of, my first counselor, Mike, and, after meeting with him and telling him a bit about my struggles, I just summed it up with, Mike, I don't know how to be a man. I just didn't. She was abusive. There were all these terrible things. But I knew enough to know that was a reflection on me and my lack of development. I just didn't know why and how. And his response to me was, Kenny, when I was in your shoes, I went and became an expert. He was an hour and a half away. I went once a week to see him and once a week to go to the group that was at the facility. The only bill I made damn sure that got paid was his. I lived in an apartment with absolutely no furniture. At the time, I had a construction company. I had 2 sawhorses and a piece of plywood that I put my computer on and a chair to sit in. I slept on the floor with blankets and a pillow. Every cent I had went to my recovery. I made the commitment. I'm done. How much does it cost me not to learn this stuff? Look at where I am. Look at what's going on. And so I'm flabbergasted by people who say, oh, it's just, I don't have the money. Yet they're spending $5, $10 at Starbucks. Like, I don't want to demean people. I'm not going to go down that path. It's just the left hemisphere. Like, I have empathy for them. They don't know that their left hemisphere is stuck in denial and self-deception, they're doubling down on their self-deception and their line of thinking, and then placing themselves as a victim going, oh, I just can't do it. Now, there are a very small percentage of people that, truly can't afford things, but it's just a choice. It's as simple as that. How much does it cost you not to do the work? Now, again, it doesn't have to be with me. Pick somebody that you like. As I always say, pick someone you know, like, and trust. But do the work. Start learning. Start investing in you. You're worth it. God, you're worth it. But I can't have, that's the codependent dynamic we all get stuck in, is we don't do the work because we want somebody's passion like mine to champion it for you. Well, you have to do that for yourself. I can't, there's no magic pill for me to, flip the switch and get you to do it. At some point, you have to choose. I'm done building the outer edges of the puzzle. I'm done taking the same steps up that hill and sliding down that same path. I want a new one. I'm worth it. Well, that's why I started all of this, is to help those people who are done.